books, It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us, both by Colleen Hoover. It Ends With Us was one of the best-selling books of 2023. 2022, it outsold the Bible. So I really wanted to read this. I looked up like what the top 10 New York bestsellers were of 2022 and 2023, and this was on both lists. So I read this in like 3 days. And then I just finished the sequel, It Starts With Us, today, like 6 hours ago. And I think this is the fastest I've ever read a book, but I think both of these took me less than 3 days to finish each. So we're going to talk about both of them. We're going to start with the first book first, obviously. Great observation, Caitlin. And yeah, we're just going to talk about it. So It Ends With Us was basically a TikTok phenomenon. It blew up on Book Talk and became one of the best-selling books of 2022 and 2023. And I was kind of interested in reading it because I wanted to get into some other big female authors, but also I wanted to get into a couple of other authors, and I looked up Colleen Hoover, and she's basically the most popular female author of the past couple of years. So I was like, I kind of wanted to give, these books a shot. So I decided to read It Ends With Us, and then I decided to pick up the sequel like 30 pages into It Ends With Us because I was already kind of hooked on the story because I already wanted to know what happens. So basically, It Ends With Us has been clarified as a romance novel. When it's anything but a romance novel, it is not a romance novel, and I feel like that's why the book was extremely controversial and kind of misinterpreted and kind of misconstrued on it being a romance novel, because it 100% is not a romance novel. I would classify it as a drama or even like a emotional drama. It's not a romance because it deals with the character named Lily Bloom and the other main character, Ryle. Ryle meets Lily on a rooftop in like the first chapter. And by the way, there's going to be heavy spoilers, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people have read these two books at this point. So I wanted to talk about it because it's still fresh on my mind since I just finished the second one today. I'm actually getting ready to go out with a couple of my coworkers. It's like 6:50 right now. I have like a good hour before I have to be ready for them. So I figured I would film this Get Ready With Me. So Lily Bloom is like a 23-year-old girl. She wants to start a flower shop business, but she meets this man a couple times. Like, she keeps on running into him, this guy Riley, and like I said, their first encounter was on the rooftop of a building across from where Lily lives, and they're both sharing like basically truths about each other because they don't know each other. They're complete strangers. And Lily had just spoken at her father's funeral. She gave the eulogy, and she is very upset about what happened because she kind of felt pretty embarrassed when she was saying the eulogy because her father was extremely abusive to her mother, and she grew up as in a broken home, and her father would abuse her mother because he was an alcoholic. But also you find out like halfway into the book what he does for a living, and he's so high up in the town that no one can do anything about him beating up her mother. Like, basically, if Lily decided to press charges, or anybody else for that matter that knew that he was abusing his wife, they basically would get arrested themselves. Turns out her father is the mayor of the town that she grew up in. I believe it's Minneapolis. I can't remember what the exact city was. But anyway, or Minnesota, like somewhere in Minnesota, I think. So Lily has to grow up in an abused home, and she basically doesn't know like what to say about her father during the funeral, because she doesn't really have anything nice to say about him because he was a piece of shit. So she meets Ryle, and it's pretty weird, their encounter at first, because he does admit, like, after only talking to her for about a half hour and like making small talk with her, that he wants to have a one night stand with her. And he says it so blatantly, like, I want to F you. And Lily is taken aback by this, but actually she was warming up to the offer finally. But then actually Ryle got a beeper message, because he turns out to be a neurosurgeon. So he's always on call. So he has to leave. So after that encounter, basically she goes on with her life. And then she ends up running into him again. I forget where. I think it was when she opened her business. So she wants to start a flower shop business. And that's basically why this bouquet of flowers is on the front cover of this book. I'm not really sure what the second book cover means, because they don't really make a reference. Oh, the lilies. The lilies in water, duh. So those are lilies. That's her favorite flower. So basically, they keep on running into each other, and he ends up coming into the flower shop as being like one of her first customers, like as soon as she's able to open it. But before she opens this flower shop, she encounters this lady on the street, and what's funny is that she's like a bored housewife, and she needs like a job, and Lily needs like an extra hand to get the flower shop renovated and ready to go and everything. And turns out she finds out that that Alyssa is actually this lady is Riley's brother. And she doesn't find this out until like a bit later. And then Riley comes into I don't know if it's Ryle or Riley, forgive me. So basically Ryle comes into the flower shop and asks her out on a date. And it's actually really cute the way that he does it, that you almost think that this relationship might work out. But this is where I wanted to weigh my opinion in, but I will in a minute. But I just wanted to say that the way that he asks her out is that he writes like a card on like a bouquet of flowers, and he addresses it to there, and he says something about like, can we do something later, or how many times we're gonna run into each other, like something really cute like that. And her sister doesn't know that his sister doesn't know that Lily has met Riley before. So basically they go on like they don't really ever go like on a real date in the book. It's kind of more so like he keeps on like texting her a lot, and their first date was not going out to dinner. I forgot what the first date actually was. But basically, like, every time they would encounter each other or do something, basically it wasn't really like a conventional date. But also the way that he gets, her to fall for him is, him constantly controlling the situation. But also abusers have a way of being able to once they get the person that they're going to abuse, then that's when their true colors show. Like, they are very persuasive people, and they'll do anything to get you in their grasp. So he keeps on like text when Lily finally gives him her number, then he like texts her a lot. And basically every time they run into each other, like, again, they've never really went out on a date. Every time he encounters her, he just begs her to F him. And, like, you're like, this is so red flaggy. It's like, but, you know, she wasn't dating anybody in her life, so she was like, you know, what's the harm? And I've met him, like, a couple times. Like, it's not like this was actually a one-night stand anymore. She, like, actually kind of knows him now. So by the time she actually admits that she wants to hook up with him, he's like so tired from a shift because he actually goes searching for her house because he wasn't sure what apartment she actually lived in. He just wanted to find her so he could F her. But he ends up falling asleep in her apartment. So he falls asleep because he's so tired from trying to find her house that they end up not hooking up. But then he comes over again another time, and she said that he was going to cook him dinner this time. And what happens is that she forgot to take the casserole out of the oven because she was distracted by Ryle, like, kind of pulling down her pants already, because she actually was naked in an apron, and that's all she was wearing because she wanted to tease him, because I don't think they had actually hooked up yet. I can't remember if they had hooked up then or the time. Actually, I think they did hook up the time before that because they hooked up in her flower shop, I think, when nobody was there. And he decided to wait for her and fall asleep on the couch in the flower shop. So that was like the next encounter that they had. And then like the third time, you know, she like invites him over and stuff. But I think they only had been out to dinner with Alyssa and Marshall before that because he wanted to meet her mother. And since, you know, her father passed away, like, obviously her mother was single, and, you know, he took an interest in Lily. That I know I'm like kind of all over the place on when all these things actually happened, but all of these events lead up to, obviously, Ryle being Lily's boyfriend. So he comes over this one night after meeting her mother, after they're not even official yet. Like, it happens very weirdly when he asks to meet her mother, because they haven't even went on an official date yet, and he wants to tag along because he wants to, like, you know, charm her mother, basically. Like, which is also another common pattern of abusers as well, is they charm everybody else around them, thinking that the person that they're abused is the only person that's actually wrong and that they deserve this abuse. And honestly, before I go on, I think that she portrayed the abuse in this book in a beautiful way, but also in a very tragic way. And I don't think she over dramatized it. And I think everything that took place in this book would be exactly what would happen with an abuser and an abused person. So now I'm going to go grab my makeup wipe. So basically, after he charms her mother, she invites him over to her apartment so she can cook him dinner, because, you know, she wants him to come over and just spend time with her and whatever. And, like, you know, he hasn't really spent the night yet with them, like, hooking up. Like, he usually falls asleep every single time, which is actually kind of cute in its own weird way. So then, but the casserole starts burning because they start, like, kissing and, like, you know, getting steamy. Because when he comes in, he like really wants to F her because, he's like wanting her to just do that. That's like her only purpose, obviously. Like, that's what an abuser would do. So after this happens and she burns the casserole, he tries to take it out of the oven, but then it turns out that he burned his hand because it was burned. Like, he didn't use a pot holder. And Lily was laughing at this because she just thought it was funny because she was drunk. Like, they had like 3 or 4 glasses of wine and she was pretty tipsy already. And since he had to perform like this huge surgery the next day of like a conjoined twins at the head, and he needed his hand, obviously, because he was a neurosurgeon. And she starts laughing and he goes, Lily, it's not funny. And he keeps on trying to say it, but she's laughing. But then she decided, maybe she should stop laughing. But when she decides to stop laughing, he backhands her. And she goes right into the kitchen counter handle, like the door handle. So then after that happens, he's like giving her ice and bandaging her up. And, he's saying like how sorry he is. He's sorry, he's sorry, he's sorry. And Lily forgives him the first time, because the first time that this ever happens to somebody that's abused, and I know that it's easy for me to say this because I've never been physically abused before, and for those that have been, I just want to say I know and understand how scared you must be, but I don't think I could ever understand the feeling that you actually have, because I've never had that fear myself. But I can understand why Lily does the things that she does throughout this book. And that's been like the controversy of both of these books, is that why would Lily decide to share custody with Ryle's baby if she was abused? And it's like, because she was scared. And I know I'm really foreshadowing right now. So basically, throughout most of the rest of the book is, sorry, I'm just texting my friend where we're gonna go eat. I kind of really want ramen, though. I'm really in the mood for that. I actually didn't think I was gonna have just enough time to be ready, because my coworker said she said she wants to meet at 8, so, which is still enough time for me. I'll still be ready by like 7:45. So throughout the book is basically this series of events of his abuse towards Lily. He doesn't like straight up beat her up. He like pushes her down a flight of stairs, and then the third time he actually headbutts her. And basically, he has been texting her obsessively. Sorry, my friends are just texting me. He's been texting her obsessively about sorry. Okay, Will meets there. I really didn't think I wasn't going to have this much time, but I mean, I'm going to have enough time to be done. So it's a series of events of his abuse towards her. And even though, it's not always physical, he basically, it's like a really sensitive subject for Ryle. Because actually, I forgot to mention this. So the night that, Ryle meets, sorry, I'm just tired. Ryle's, Lily's mother, Lily actually ends up running into Atlas. And Atlas is actually um Lily's first love as a child. And the book, goes back and forth between Lily's past and her present of her relationship with Ryle. So the way that Colleen Hoover conveys this is that basically it's in like a bunch of Ellen DeGeneres letters, because when Lily was growing up, she couldn't really have any friends at the house because like her father didn't want friends over because he didn't want her friends or her friends' parents knowing how he treated her family or her mother. So Atlas was the kid that actually lived across the street from her in an abandoned house. And Atlas was like a 17-year-old kid, and Lily was I'm probably going to be done with my makeup before I even get into the second book. But the second book is not as involved as the first one. The first one's a lot more involved. So basically, he has been staying at the house because he is actually an abandoned child. Like, his mother didn't want him, and neither did his father. His father has never been a part of his life. So he's been living in this abandoned house, and Lily notices him and basically starts feeding him, and they spend a lot of time together because he's the only person she can kind of sneak in and out of her house without her father knowing. But one thing leads to another, and her father ends up finding out about Atlas. And he actually ends up beating him up with a baseball bat. Because, like, all of this leads up to his father finding him. And after he beats him up with a baseball bat because he thinks that he's effing his daughter, and stealing things from his house, he ends up going to the hospital, and I don't think Lily ever sees him again after that, because he's actually going to be leaving to go to Boston to give Lily like a better life, but also he couldn't stay where he was because it wasn't doing him any favors either staying there. He had to leave at some point. So basically he goes to Boston, and Boston has always been like Lily and Atlas's like center place that they wanted to, they dreamed of living in. So he ends up leaving after that night, and Lily like basically spends the rest of her teenage years, missing him and wishing that he was back in her life. But then she goes to college and everything, and then she moves to Boston, and then her mother actually follows her shortly after because she doesn't want to stay in Minnesota anymore because there's really nothing for her there, because the only person she would want to be close to is her daughter. And at first, like, Lily wasn't crazy about the idea, but then she eventually warmed up to it, and then, like, she sees her mother as much as possible. But that's why her mother is able to meet Lily at the restaurant, because they don't live too far from each other. So basically, she runs into Atlas at the restaurant, and she tries to play it off with Ryle after their encounter, because she kind of, like, keeps her head down, like, the whole time at the table, because she had went into the bathroom at some point, and he follows her in there, and they start talking because she noticed him at the table. And she tries to cover this up from Ryle when they get back from the restaurant, saying that she said that she wasn't that crazy about the restaurant and she doesn't want to go back there. And she knows that Marshall and Alyssa are going to have a double date with them like the week after, and they want to take them to a restaurant, and he's like, we should take them here. But she says that she doesn't want to do that. But when they come back to to her place, like in the stairwell, they start arguing about why she doesn't want to go. And then eventually Ryle did say that he noticed that she was acting very weird around the waiter and stuff. And she's like, is it that waiter? And she's like, no, it has nothing to do with him. But then, like, he ends up, like, pushing her down the stairs. And then it's, like, the same cycle of, you know, him apologizing and all this bullshit. So then, she does run into Atlas again. Actually, I think maybe that was the second time when they went back to the restaurant. Oh, yeah, it was the second time, not the first time, sorry. So basically, they run into him the second time, and Ryle notices this time, not the first time. He was asking why she didn't want to go. She was so adamant about not going back there, and she never said anything because she didn't want to, like, set him off, because she already knew how sensitive, like, his temper was. So that's why he pushes her down the stairs that night, is because they encounter each other in the restaurant, and he wants to fight him in the bathroom, because they all, like, go into the bathroom at one point. Like, Atlas follows Lily into the bathroom and says, you know, I can't believe it's you. And then Ryle shortly follows after, because he noticed that they went into the bathroom. And he says, is this the fucking homeless guy that you effed when you were young? Because they did have sex when they were younger. On one of the last nights they were together. And, like, Atlas was always hesitant about, you know, taking her virginity, because he was 2 years older than her, and he wanted to be, you know, really gentle and didn't want to end up getting arrested for taking her virginity, especially with her father. So this ends up setting off Ryle, and he thinks that this is the root of all of their problems, is because he thinks that eventually that he thinks that Lily is still in love with him. So pretty much the rest of the story unfolds at that point, of Ryle constantly scaring Lily because he thinks that he's still in love with him. But eventually, you know, fast forward a little bit more, you know, we're going to go back real quick. So on the first night that they met, Ryle said that he never wanted to have kids or get married, because he said that he was dedicated to his work, and he said that he can never have a kid, or he can never get married, which is, there's no issue with that. And that wouldn't be something that was, like, super red flaggy, because sometimes the abuser can end up loving the kid and just abuse, like, the mother, like basically what happened with Lily. But also the father knocked over Lily when she was little and, like, cracked her, ended up wounding her head, like she hit it on the driveway pavement. So because the father came home one night, like, super angry because the mom had to park her car in the driveway and wasn't allowed to park her car in the garage. And he came home one day being so pissed off because she was unloading the groceries being parked in the garage so she wouldn't have to be too far away from the garage. And he, like, starts beating her up and choking her on the hood of the car after Lily goes inside, and he ends up, you know, pushing her, and she smacks her head on the ground. So that's, like, the whole thing that happened that night. So the sequence of abuse keeps on happening, but then they end up getting married. And fast forward even more, Atlas still, like, checks in on her, you know, occasionally. Like, he stops by her job sometimes, or she sometimes goes to the restaurant and, like, talks to him. But mostly, you know, he keeps his distance because he knows, like, how crazy he is, how crazy Ryle is. So I guess that this looks pretty good. I like it. But Ryle ends up wanting to elope with uh with Lily, and I think the why he did it like this is so then he could just lock her in super fast, and then she would feel like she was trapped, and that's basically what happens. So there's this one night though, fast forward a bit later, like a couple weeks after they've been married, or maybe I don't even think it's been that long, and he's at her apartment one day, like waiting for her to come home, and he goes through like this series of letters that Violet has from Atlas when they were children. I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk about both books. I might have to talk about the second one in another Get Ready With Me, because there is a lot that happens in the first book. Well, I mean, I don't really have to say too much about the second book because it's not really as involved as the first one. So she comes home and, just expects, spend time with him and whatever. And he ends up getting so angry because he found these letters and he read them. And she has no idea why he's upset, that he ends up headbutting her. And she starts bleeding. But the last time that she had saw Atlas, he gave her his phone number so he could call her whenever there was an emergency. So, and also like the phone number like kind of fell out of her case, and Ryle like got so upset about that too, that he thought that she was cheating on him with Atlas. So he thinks that this is the whole reason why they had so many problems, is because he thought that she was unfaithful. Let me just do Pat McGrath. So basically, Atlas wants her to leave Ryle, but Atlas takes her to the hospital that night because she calls him and says that she needs help. So he comes to her and takes her to the hospital, and they say that, they have to run a bunch of tests on her to make sure she's not concussed and all of that. But then she finds out, because they said we don't want to do a CT scan on a pregnant woman. She finds out that she's pregnant with Ryle's baby. So basically the whole rest of the book is about like her preparing for when their baby comes. And basically as soon as the baby is born, she asks for a divorce from Ryle because they had been separated for a while. And actually Ryle gets this residency opportunity in like Cambridge for like 3 months before the baby is born. And he had brought this up to her like a couple months ago, that he wanted to do this residency, but she said that she didn't want this to happen because, they're still married and she didn't want him to go away for that long. But then now, since he got accepted, and she didn't even know, he didn't even tell her until he got accepted to it, because he just decided to apply to it anyway and not tell her. This actually comes at a good time for her, because then she doesn't have to worry about him touching her or abusing her for like 3 months. So he ends up going away. But then when he comes back like so unexpectedly, and like he sees her one day and she says, we have to figure out things for our child. And he kind of scares her. I don't remember if he asks. No, she doesn't ask for the key then. So basically, they end up getting a divorce because once the baby is born, she has to think about what's best for her child. So they get a divorce, and she doesn't automatically move into Atlas's arms. They're still like friends at this point, and that's basically where the book ends. But I cried like a bunch of times in this book, because the way that she writes about the abuse with Lily, but also with it's just really sad, and she's a really good writer. The only thing that I had an issue with was sometimes she would kind of go on a lot about her past in the form of Ellen, basically, and kind of the letters were a bit long. So that's why that was the only reason why I would give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. So basically, at the end of the book, she says to him, I want a divorce after their baby is born, because she says that she doesn't want her kid to be going through the same fear that she has been through with him. And it's really sad. Like, and then she ends up running into Atlas at the end of the first book. And basically, that's why this book is called It Starts With Us, because it's the sequel, and it's basically all about Atlas's and Lily's story. But they start taking things really, really slow, because I really don't have to say much about the second book, because it's not as involved as the first one. So basically, do I like that? I guess that's kind of pretty. I mean, yeah, I guess it's okay. So basically, it's about Atlas's and Lily's relationship, and, you know, Lily's kind of hesitant to take things faster with Atlas because she doesn't want Ryle to be upset, because even though they're divorced, he has supervised visits with Lily. Like, he can only see her like twice a week, but they're not really sharing custody. And there was like this one video that I saw where someone was already misinterpreting what happened with the custody agreement with Lily and Ryle. I'm like, did they even read the second book? Because they were only talking about the first one. They didn't really say much about the second one, and it's like, well, if you read the second one, then you would understand that's not what the agreement actually was. And also, I took a picture on why, you know, Lily does it this way. Also because Ryle has the money. He could take the child and not even give a second thought about giving her custody, because he could have done that, but he didn't. He knew that he had to be on his best behavior, because then he would lose visits with his daughter. So, let me just talk about it real quick. And then basically the whole book is about Atlas's and Lily's love story. It's not really as serious as the first one, but you also find out a lot more about Atlas's childhood, and I'll just touch on that. So the passage that I want to read is exactly why she does this with Ryle. You know, on you know, sharing custody with the daughter. So it says, my lawyer was very straightforward when I said I wanted sole custody. And this is coming from Lily. Unless I was willing to drag the dirtiest parts of our rock bottom into a courtroom, there wasn't much I could do to prevent Ryle from getting visits with Emerson. Like, he gets visits, but she still keeps him 99% of the time. And even if I were to bring up the domestic violence, my lawyer said it's very rare that a willing, successful father without a record who provides financial support would have any sort of rights removed. So she didn't want to go through the court battle, and also she doesn't make enough money to really do this, because she is going to be getting, you know, the child support from Ryle. But basically the whole book is about her trying to be civil with Ryle, but she also prevents having a relationship with Atlas until like further into the book, because she doesn't want to upset Ryle, because she feels like if he finds out about Atlas and her that he would try and take away their child from her. But honestly, he probably wouldn't do that because he's such a narcissist and he's a neurosurgeon that he probably cares way more about his job than disappearing with his daughter. But you never know what these irrational abusers are going to do. So it's basically about Atlas's and Lily's relationship after they're able to be together. But Atlas tries and takes it really slow with Lily. Let me just grab my lip product. So Lily is trying to keep things like civil with Ryle because she doesn't want to upset him, telling him that she's in a relationship with Atlas, because Ryle thinks that's the whole reason why they didn't work out is because he thought that Lily was unfaithful, when it's more so he's a fucking douchebag and he abused her. So you also find out a lot more about Atlas's mother in this book. And you found out a lot of the neglect that Atlas went through as a child. And this book bounces back and forth between Lily's perspective and Atlas's perspective. The first book is only pretty much from Lily's perspective. I think it's mostly all from Lily's perspective. I don't think any of it's ever from Ryle's perspective, or it's not from Atlas's in the first book. So turns out Atlas actually ends up finding out that he has a brother because his mom decides to contact him for the first time in like 10 years because she never wanted him growing up. When he came to Lily's house, when I really like that she, tied this up and, explained why Atlas ended up being in that house, was because he left his state or like his home and tried to go somewhere because her boyfriend kicked him out because he didn't want him there anymore. But it was really more so the mother enabling this. And she also abused Atlas as a child too. They actually gave him like cigarette burns and everything. And I cried during this part when he would explain what his mother used to do to him. It was really heartbreaking. So I did cry like once in the second book. But it was a very emotional journey, these two books. And I think they were both very well written. Sorry. Let me just finish putting my lipstick on. I have a couple more thoughts. Okay, I actually need to go. So I think I'm going to wrap up my thoughts about the second book another time. I mean, I'm still going to keep it in this video, but it's only going to be like maybe another 5-minute clip tops, explaining the rest of what happens in the second book and my opinion on both. So yeah, I have to go, but I'll just tell you guys really quick what I used in this video. So I went in with the Cursed Cosmetics Spellbook palette, and I went in with a few of these shades, and I really like how the look turned out. I think it turned out really grungy, which is exactly what I wanted. So I used Sticks and Stones in the crease, then I darkened up the crease more with Wand. And then I used Craft on the outer corners. And then I used Spell all over the lid. And then I went in with Bones on the brow bone. And then I used Hex on the inner corners. I wasn't going to use this palette, but then looking at the final look, I actually really like how it turned out. So this is a good palette. Why is there already transfer? And then I just used my Makeup Forever black liner, and my mascara was the Tartelette tubing mascara, and then I used the Lash Discovery on the bottom lashes. And then I used the Do It Spray in the Power Grip Primer by e.l.f. And then my foundation and concealer was the Lancome Teint Idol Ultra Wear Foundation in the shade 120N. And then I used the Tarte C Concealer in the shade Porcelain Sand 8S, and then I used the Pat McGrath powder and the Urban Decay powder to set, the Urban Decay Stay Naked powder and the Pat McGrath Labs powder underneath my eyes. And then for my bronzer, I used my Pat McGrath bronzer in the shade Naked Desire. And then I used actually 2 new products for my blush and highlight. Where is the other one? Where did I put it? Did I put it back? Where did it go? This is the highlighter, but where is the blush? Oh, it's right here. I think this is it. Yeah, I used M Cosmetics today, and I used the shade Magic Hour as my blush. It's a really pretty blush. I don't know if this is the actual color, though, because my brush is a bit dirty, but I just washed them like a couple of days ago. So I don't know if it's looking more peachy, but then I also used the coinciding highlighter in the shade Clarity. And it's pretty. I like it, but it's not like my absolute favorite. And then I set my face with the Milk Spray, and then I set my brows with the e.l.f. Brow Boss Gel. And then for my lip liner, I used BFF3 from ColourPop. And then for my lipstick, I used the Lime Crime Velveteen Lipstick in the shade Salem. So yeah, I will wrap up my thoughts soon, probably tomorrow night. So bye. Okay, so hey guys, I know that this is a different day, but I wanted to just wrap up what else happens in It Starts With Us and then just give you guys my overall thoughts of both books. So this won't take very long. Basically, after Atlas discovers that he has a brother, he tries to keep him and connect with him because he knows that if he goes back, his brother goes back to his mother, he is going to be either neglected or harmed. So, but since he's just the brother, he would have no legal claim to him because the mother is still alive. So she would still have rights for him to stay with her. So the way that he finds out he has a brother is that somebody's actually Atlas is a restaurant owner, and he that's why in the first book Lily runs into him in the restaurant that he works at. Turns out he's the chef, and he's actually the owner as well. And he finds out that someone has been vandalizing and breaking into the restaurants that he owns. He also ends up opening a new restaurant in the book to just keep himself busy. But also, like, there was like another meaning on why he opened both restaurants, but I forgot why. But if you read the book, you'll understand. Like, I don't have to describe absolutely everything about it because, like, that's serious spoilers. But then anyway, basically he finds out that the person vandalizing his restaurant is his younger brother, because at first he didn't know who it was. Also, the brother thought that Atlas didn't want to know his brother, but Atlas didn't even know that his brother existed because his mother calls him out of the blue for the first time in like 10 years and tells Atlas he's missing. And Atlas is like, who are you talking about? He's like, what do you want, money? And she's saying she's saying that he had a brother with his stepfather, because his stepfather is with his mother. Like, their father like left when Atlas was a baby. He didn't want anything to do with Atlas. So she moves in with this guy named Tim, and those end up being he ends up being his brother, but it's more like his stepbrother because they share a different father. Because Tim is not Atlas's father, but basically he tries to fight to get him with him. But also, like, this whole book is basically Lily's struggle to be able to be with Atlas without Ryle getting upset about it. Like, you know, honestly, she's a very, very good writer because this is based on her parents' story. And she said that this was the hardest book that she's ever written. And then this one was just more so not as much based on her parents, but this was more so a continuation of Lily and Atlas's love story, but also with some of the problems of Ryle being abusive and still being extremely jealous, and Lily thinking that they weren't able to be together. So basically, Ryle's brother and her husband, what's her name again? Oh my god. I remember the name of the husband, but not the best friend. What is her name? Oh my god. Alyssa. Alyssa is so appalled by the way Ryle has been with Lily that she, helps Lily throughout the whole book to navigate her relationship with Atlas, and also Lily uses Alyssa and Marshall as allies anytime she wants to confront Ryle about a problem, because she knows now that she can't confront him or talk to him when they're alone, because he can't control his temper, because he never, hits her in this book, but because they're divorced, and if he does that, then she could claim that he abused her, and then he could possibly lose visiting rights, even though she actually has full custody. He just has visitation. And what I didn't understand is, like, one person that was talking about her problems with Colleen Hoover's books is that she said that they shared custody, and I was like, sounds like she did even explain in this book that she had sole custody of the child. So basically that's the whole gist of this book. Atlas ends up being able to keep his brother because his mother is abusive. And I forget why it works out, but basically it's his choice to stay with him because his brother wants to meet his birth father, because he thinks that he's the only one that actually cares about him, but he left him when he was like a baby too. Like, he doesn't care about him. But then his brother decides to stay with Atlas because they talk to each other in the car, because Atlas decides to let Josh meet his father, but then they have this conversation in the car outside of his house before they decide to meet him. And he decides that he wants to stay with Atlas because he said, why didn't he try to find me if he had all this time to find me? And also Atlas and Lily end up together, and it happens like halfway through the book, and then they end up getting married, and they end up being together. The only thing that I wish that she would have done with this book is that I wish that there was like maybe like a 10-page or like even like a 5-page epilogue to see whether or not Atlas and Lily had kids. But you probably can just figure that out for yourself, because now Ryle has to be civil with Lily and Atlas to raise their child. So it all ends up working out for Lily. So I'm glad that she had a happy ending, as well as Atlas, because they were two abused children that came together, and it was honestly, it was a beautiful story. I think that she's a really, really good writer. So I would rate both of these a 4.5 out of 5. The only reason why I'm rating this one a 4.5 is because I feel like there was just a couple of times where she had a lot of the letters that she wrote to Ellen, and they would go on for like a whole chapter. And I understand that you needed that for the context of Lily's past and what she went through. But sometimes it was a little bit too long that I was like, can we just get to like what happens with Ryle and Lily in the future? So like basically every other chapter, it's all from Lily's perspective in this book, but it was beautifully written. And I really do enjoy her writing, and I think that she really did describe how it is in an abusive relationship. I don't think there's anything that made me think, Lily wouldn't do something like that, because the victim is always afraid of the abuser. And that's pretty much how this book was written, is that she was living in constant fear of Ryle, and everything that she did, she would make excuses for the first time she got hit. She's like, oh, it's just an accident, it'll never happen again. And that's basically what happens in abusive relationships, unfortunately. But I really, really enjoyed it. And then this one I would rate the same. And the only reason is that I do wish that there was a little bit of an epilogue, but also I think that this one was not as good of a story as this one. I mean, it was still really good. And I'm glad she wrote a sequel so we could find out what happened to them. But I think that this one was a better book in general. But they were both still fantastic reads. I almost rated this a 5 because I kind of almost enjoyed this one a little bit more, but I did like the story a lot more of the first one. This one was kind of a lot more, not really fluffier, but they both got me emotionally. I cried a couple of times in this book. There were some parts that were very hard to read, very emotionally just triggering for anyone. And this one I cried when they talked about Atlas's cigarette burn scars. That was so sad. But I think that these are really good. These are probably her best books, most likely. These are the only 2 Colleen Hoover books I've read so far. I don't know if I'm going to read any other ones. I'm kind of getting into some other authors right now. But I really did enjoy them, and I finished both of them in 6 days. So I think I took 3 days to read both of them. I blasted through this one. This one barely took me any time. But yeah, I really did enjoy both of them. I think they're great reads if you decided to read them yourself. I know, again, Colleen Hoover is very controversial, but I don't know. I don't really have an issue with her writing. I think she's a great writer. She's honestly one of my favorite female writers that I've read so far. I think she's a better writer than Rebecca Yarros. So yeah, that's it, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Tell me your thoughts on these books and whether or not you've read either of them. I really am enjoying these book Get Ready With Me's. It's literally one of my favorite videos to film now. I just really enjoy talking about books. So please like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at CBW819 and check out my Poshmark at the same handle. And let me know if I missed anything. And let me know if you've read these books and what you thought of them. And I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.